Okay, so look at this art. It's pretty bad, right? Well, this is the original art for One Punch Man, the webcomic. And the author, One, who is actually a pretty good artist and is actually kind of a genius at constructing shots, angles, and perspectives. That said, this was obviously a hobby at first, and story trumps all. So what we get here is some pretty, I guess, quote unquote bad art. The thing is, art is in the eye of the beholder, but even if you want to argue the discourse that that's the case, I would say that he has a 1 in a million chance of getting this on Instagram and people actually liking this art. And that's to say that as toxic as fandom is nowadays and as toxic as places like Instagram are nowadays, I promise you that this thing would be downvoted to the depths of oblivion if it was a no-name picture that was posted on, say, Instagram. But anyways, I think my kind of faith in humanity was restored when I see a successful webcomic like this get transitioned. So my research isn't great on this one, but apparently what I've heard is he still draws it now, but then it gets kind of redone by another studio. There's another artist who does One Punch Man right now, and it looks really good. But there's still that really bad version of the webcomic out there. And I think it's super cool that you can just get your thoughts out there and it can turn into something special like One Punch Man. And I think that when we talk about barriers to entry, when it comes to the entertainment industry, when it comes to webcomics, when it comes to anime and creating things, I think this is where it's super cool when other people who may not be as talented, and again, this gentleman is very talented, the author One does know how to draw, but you know, as a point of reference, he drew these really quickly, he did the concepts really quickly, and he got the story down. And that's kind of the point. The story, again, trumps all. That said, the anime is really good and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And so I want to really break that down today and break down kind of my thoughts on season 1. There's going to be mild spoilers for season 1, and I'm not going to talk about anything beyond season 1 or the manga. So if you're caught up, join me and let's talk about it.
I watched the first season and I am a newbie. Why did it take me so long to watch this? Well, look, you know what? I'm a retired 45-year-old special operations veteran who explored the world, did a lot of cool things, pew-pewed for a lifetime, and now got the chance to sit down and actually watch this stuff again. And I'm really re-exploring everything. So I was obviously a huge anime fan in my teens and into my early 20s, but then all of a sudden, marriage, career, family, job, you get it. You get my point.
Okay, so One Punch Man is a story about a superhero who can kill things with one punch. So essentially, you're taking the whole training arc out of play here, and you're just skipping forward to the end of his kind of life cycle. So the closest thing we have in the West to this would probably be Invincible or maybe The Boys. That is to say that it's a unique take on the superhero genre. And I didn't even see that or notice that because of how it was promoted at first. And I love superheroes, so I definitely would have checked this out. But the dude is bald. He doesn't look cool, but he's really, really strong. But that's actually the allure or kind of the genius of this character. He becomes bald because he trains so hard that he loses his hair, but that actually introduces a ton of other things when it comes to character work. It's not seen as cool here. It's not like, oh, wow, you're bald. That's pretty cool. Tough guy, et cetera, et cetera. This is actually something that he is super insecure about, and we kind of work through in terms of the story. But that said, I think not only is this a unique story when it comes to superheroes, I think it's just a unique story, period. Because again, it takes Campbell's hero's journey and flips it on its side, where now we're at the end. Again, because we're at the end of his journey here, we can get some really cool ideas out. We can really play with the story. I guess some would call this postmodernism. Okay, so at 25 years old, Saitama becomes this amazing superhero who can literally punch anything and kill it. If you can imagine, if you can dream it, Saitama can punch it with one punch. And that goes throughout the entirety of this story. It does not hold back on this. In fact, I was actually waiting for it to flip on its side and lose that kind of appeal, that allure that makes the first episode, second episode, third episode so good, where you actually know that the hero is gonna win. And I actually thought, how long are they gonna keep this up? You know, there's no way that he can stick to his guns. He's not gonna be able to stick with this storytelling device. But I was proven wrong, and thankfully so. I was so hoping that he would stick to it, and in fact, he does. And it pays off, for me at least, all the way up to the end, especially in the last boss. And I do want to talk about that, but that has a lot to do with character work, so I want to kind of save that for later. So the first thing I want to talk about is how One Punch Man is so self-aware. And look no further than the theme song itself. I mean, it is a guitar
riff the likes of, I don't know, man, you named the guitar riff, but it literally says its name in the title. It'd be like yelling Superman or Batman. You get the point, right? Anyways, this theme just continues for the rest of the anime. For example, the Heroes Association ranking system, it's a blatant trope of power levels, S tier being, God tier, but One Punch Man, even though he could probably take on God 1v1, is like B class. He's stuck in mediocrity. At least, in the foreseeable future. Again, this is just season 1, so I don't know where it goes from here. That said, consider the character King. He's known as the strongest man on Earth. He's got scars to prove it, but he's just an ordinary guy who gets extraordinarily lucky. And, the existence of King within the story, it serves as this parody of the superhero ideal where when the spotlight is on him, he looks amazing. Everybody respects him, yet he has no strength, actually. He's just been very lucky in life. And I do think that this theme is super worthwhile and worthy of exploration. One of the things that I learned later on in life that I constantly harp on to my friends and family is the idea of luck and the distribution of luck and how you don't even know where you are on the luck bell curve. So if you're a normal human being, you don't know what that means. Essentially, there's a couple books that came out very recently. One of them is called Fooled by Randomness, and the other one is called Black Swan. Those books talk a lot about how luck works, actually, and how we just can't even compute that as human beings. And so this show encapsulates that very, very easily by showing you that, the strongest person in the world, given the unfortunate circumstances that he's in, just becomes a B tier character in this show where somebody like King doesn't do anything and he becomes S tier because he's extraordinarily lucky. So to continue on this theme of subversion of expectations, one of the biggest ones that I think is hilariously funny, but it actually really works and pays off a lot to me. And for what it's worth, it stays the course. It doesn't cheat this. And what I'm talking about is how the battles unfold. So in traditional shonen, of course, there's a climax, there's a payoff, there's a buildup, there's a tough fight. Everything's hard. The characters are just facing off. You're not sure who's going to win. And at times, I still wasn't sure if he was going to win, if the big bad was actually going to, change everything about One Punch Man. But no, let me tell you that, again, spoilers here, but mild spoilers, he wins. He wins with one punch. It's super anticlimactic, but that's the beauty of it. I love it. I love that he just takes these characters out with one punch. We don't typically get to see a hero with this caliber of strength be awesome for the entirety of the anime. So another place where I think One Punch Man is super self-aware is the world building itself. Like the cities are named like A through Z. I don't know if there's a Z city, but I know there's A, B, whatever. The point is, it just doesn't even matter. It's like, this is city A, this is city B. As lazy as these art panels are, additionally, the naming of the cities. He's like, man, we're going to talk about the meat and potatoes. And you don't need to know this, but you just need to know that they're cities. And clearly this is Tokyo. I mean, if you look at the architecture and environments, it clearly looks like Tokyo. But right now, I do want to talk about at the ripe primal age of 25, him kind of getting to the end of his life cycle. And that's kind of a unique critique on, a place that most of us will never get to in our entire lives, let alone 25. And this, I think, becomes one of those old age kind of exploratory works when it comes to like immortals or elves. You think about like vampires, Highlander, elves. These folks, these kindred spirits live so long that they have to find other useful ways to kind of entertain themselves, to kind of get past these high levels of expression when it comes to their own personal growth. Basically, what do you do when you've completed everything you've wanted to complete? You're as strong as you can be. What else do you kind of cherish? What else do you hold on to? What do you kind of explore? See, this becomes super interesting because we know that most people will never get to this form of mastery. And even folks who have gotten to this form of mastery, the master artists, for example, those people always have this kind of insecurity about them amongst them. So it's really hard to write this. This is a situation as a writer that you have to kind of explore and make up things that nobody will ever feel. Nobody can feel. It's like trying to pretend you're God, right? You know, some people probably get it more right than others, but nobody can get it quite right. But it's a really fun exploration, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this. So, all right, now I want to turn the corner and talk about something pretty cool. If we kind of layer Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, and this is just the pyramid, and it's a psychological kind of mechanism that was developed a long time ago that psychologists tend to agree with. You can think whatever you want. It's just a thing that we're using to talk about something, okay? So the triangle itself has these layers, and on the bottom layers, there's the physiological needs. That's air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, etc. As you move up, it becomes safety, that's security, etc. Obviously, One Punch Man, not scared of anything. He's got the safety. Love and belonging, he has some of that. He has a sense of connection through his kind of pupil, which is super interesting to me, but that's the only person that we see in his life. But I do think even before his pupil, he has a very, very keen sense of connection to his community. He's literally a superhero and he helps people. That's like his whole thing. He trained so hard so that he could make sure that he could help little boys like this in the beginning of the series. And then we see it move up to esteem and self-actualization. And here becomes the rub.
You see here, Saitama essentially becomes the kind of epitome of everything a superhero or a strong person can be. And that becomes a really big problem because where else do you go from here? Essentially, what is there left once you've reached the panacea? Once there is no more ceiling to break through?
All he can do is look for that battle that makes him feel alive. And he even has nightmares about this. He's very self-aware that his esteem based on this is extremely lacking. And we can see this through these nightmares that he has here. So in terms of storytelling, it shouldn't work. But I guess the way it does work is through the other heroes and kind of through his protege / pupil. We also get this funny irony again, and we already talked about this, where he's trying to actually rank up throughout the kind of Heroes Association, where it really doesn't matter to him because he even says like, look, I'm just doing this for fun. But at least it gives you kind of some plot to work through, whereas before we just didn't have anything. So essentially, you know, one of the things that I think is super cool about this, and not for nothing, look, here's something I want to talk about. This dude's always got grocery bags in his hand. This is like an homage to something or some symbology that I haven't quite unpacked, but I think what it means is, and what it does for the character is just really grounds him. It's like the thing that he does is he gets groceries and then, you know, once in a while he fights bad guys. He even cleans his gloves in the beginning of the show here. You know, he's always cleaning his uniform. And there's even one part where he's essentially making sure that his uniform's clean and free of debris so it can pound the baddie. So I think these little small things do add up meaningfully to create a character that's human, that's kind of just like you and me. Kind of like saying that, you know, given our human nature, we could be One Punch Man if we tried hard enough. And you see this in the way that he tells you that actually 100 push-ups, 100 squats, and 10K every day for 3 years can get you there. And that's not lost on me because the thing that people don't recognize and don't realize is if you do spend 3 years doing something every day and actually trying to master it, you probably could. Maybe not the one punch, but you get my point. And in fact, his pupil thinks it's a joke. It's like, why are you joking with me? That's not even that hard. So, you know, it's funny because that's essentially how he gets there. And we don't really know if that's actually what he did, but according to the story, that's kind of what he did. You know, maybe he broke his limiter or whatever like that. And there are some kind of clues in the manga, but again, I'm not going to spoil any of that stuff, but suffice it to say, again, with the luck thing, I think the author is really trying to make this personal, make this feel like it's a dude that could be you. So the other psychological elements that I want to talk about is kind of like the mild depression that he has. But I kind of want to shift towards and kind of juxtapose that to another analytical lens that we can use, which is the psychology of narrative therapy. So we could say that Saitama is caught into what is essentially thin narrative, quote unquote. Narrative therapy essentially says that individuals narrate their own life experiences, attributing meaning to events in a way that shapes their reality and identity. In Saitama's case, he initially crafted a quote unquote thick narrative loaded with meaning and purpose to become the strongest hero. And the plot twist, of course, is he achieved it. And that narrative suddenly becomes what we would call paper thin. So this story has reached its natural climax, yet he's still got this lifetime ahead of him. And the punchline is both literal and metaphorical. Basically, what I'm trying to say is now he has to create and grapple with a thicker script and enrich that narrative so that he can imbue that upon himself so his post-hero life will actually have some kind of meaning. Basically, he needs a new story, a story that he's going to tell himself, something that is as strong as the story that got him to become a superhero in the first place. So I think the irony here is, in the end, the story is about being able to live with yourself, even when you're the best at something that very few of us will ever know the pain of, right? And that we've been chasing all our lives. So to me, it's about just not moving the goalpost, because as you can see here, as rich as he is in power, drunk with power, if you will, it's the same thing with money. You know, they say money doesn't cure anything. It just makes you more of who you are. And so too with strength. He doesn't change. He's still him. He's this somber, melancholy dude that is pretty straightforward. He does have times where he pipes up and creates a narrative because he's strong. He's strong emotionally. And I think these strong moments where he kind of lashes out against the audience or against the public in order to make him the villain, these moments are essentially the most important moments of the film. Even though it doesn't really linger on them, I think that this is where he progresses. This is where he becomes strong enough to say that, you know what, I can punch everything to death. And even if I don't get the credit that I deserve, I can still live with it because I know who I am. And even his disciple narrates that for us as the viewer. And it works. It works for me. And I think that it's a great story when it comes to the development of One Punch Man and his kind of journey throughout this, looking for more power. And interestingly enough, the last kind of boss that Saitama fights in the season 1 ending, he's the same. He's the same as him. He's looking for a challenge. He crosses the galaxy looking for the exact same thing. So the irony here is not lost. The beast that dies at the end here, that beast, while losing, is actually at peace. That is the thing that he sought. He sought someone who is stronger. He sought somebody who was able to beat him, and he found that in One Punch Man. Again, ironically, Saitama probably wishes he was this beast dying here, which again is super ironic, but I think it's a super bold way to tell a story. And we know that like Japanese culture is extremely fatalistic when it comes to certain things. For example, kamikaze pilots, seppuku, ritual suicide, those kinds of things. And so when you have this culturally, it does become a kind of calling card to how society or a person can deal with it. And I think this is the author's take on how one might or should deal with it, or kind of maybe the kind of ridiculousness of how kind of ingrained that is in just the culture itself, within how people expose themselves to such unwarranted amounts of stress and kind of rot within themselves just to hold up these kind of archaic traditions that may or may not still serve the kind of community writ large. So if you haven't watched One Punch Man, then I definitely recommend that you go check it out. The main character works, the story works really well. It's unique. It's something you haven't seen for sure. And especially if you like superhero movies, this just works. Some of the ensemble cast doesn't work for me, but that's okay because they don't linger on them or spend much time with them, at least yet. I think season 1's pacing is great, beginning, middle, end. It gets there. Yes, there are some kind of weird throwaway villains, but when you can punch things and kill them with one shot, that's to be expected. So there's going to be more and more and more and more villains. And, you know, the bad guy at the end makes sense. A lot of this stuff makes sense. The kind of motivations of his disciple makes sense. There's nothing here that really throws me off. Again, some of the ensemble cast kind of feels kind of wonky or weird, but there's enough good with the bad. Oh, and the thing that I definitely want to mention that I forgot to mention is that this thing made me laugh. Like One Punch Man definitely made me laugh. There was a bunch of parts that I didn't think I was going to find funny that I ended up actually chuckling out loud. And I don't tend to do that. I'm not like a person that laughs very easily at things when it comes to like movies and comedies. So the fact that I got more than a dozen chuckles in one season is completely legit for me. I legitimately laughed out loud several times. So now here's the part where I shill some stuff that I'm working on. So this is a D&D animated adventure, loosely. It's AI filmmaking for sure, but there's obviously a lot of original art design, and a lot of cleanup art for some of the mats. So if you're a D&D fan or you like the high fantasy genre, then go ahead and check it out. It's called Saga of the Fallen. The link will be in the description. Here's the trailer.
In the fabric of the universe, where light and shadow dance eternally, a delicate balance holds the threads of reality together. But even the strongest weave can fray, leading to moments when the barriers between worlds thin and the forgotten whispers of ancient evils stir once more. This is a story about the eternal struggle between light and darkness, where heroes rise to challenge the night and discover their own inner luminance, proving that even in the most profound darkness, a single spark of courage can illuminate the world.